What is conciliation? Conciliation, principles, and empathic communication. So what I'm going to be talking about are really techniques or approaches that you'll be able to use both to improve your interpersonal communications with your friends or with people that you just meet, as well as with people who are not like you. So actually you can use these skills with anyone. Okay. So the challenge, as Margarita was talking about, is to bridge the divide between us and those who are different in some way, so we can be more effective in bringing positive change together. When we look at one another, we immediately start to categorize each other into stereotypes. And if you remember, Chimamanda Adichie talked about this. There's one story about Africans, and everybody looks at an African and presumes they understand Africans because they know that one story. So when we look at someone else, we almost have to be counterintuitive and say, as Margarita has, let's get beyond the obvious of what divides us or how I would categorize you, and let's look at what we have in common with a goal towards either becoming friends or changing our attitudes, becoming more tolerant, or perhaps taking some action. We begin with values and understanding so we can relate to the other as human beings who may think, feel, and behave differently than we do. Thinking is the way we conceive of the world and put things into categories. Feel is somebody may be angry, or someone may feel hurt, or someone may feel victimized, and we tend to react to that feeling either positively or sympathetically, but sometimes it's good to get to the question behind the question, or the feeling is coming from somewhere. Let's acknowledge that feeling, and then how do we look at that feeling instead of a gate that stops us, is an opening in communication to bring us together. We're going to illustrate these, by the way, in some role play, and then we're going to have you do some role play. So I'm taking you through this so that you'll be able to use it tonight. So we begin with relationship and we proceed to attitude and behavior change. And what's important here is I don't get into an encounter with how do I convince Giovanni that I'm right. And I look at the encounter as what strategies can I use to convince him to do what I want. It's how can I open up to Giovanni, to what Giovanni wants and what I want. How does he feel? How does he think? And maybe I'll change. Because if he listens to me and I listen to him, and we both put our agendas aside for a moment, we can come together with maybe better solutions, or we understand the solutions that we both take together without it being a win-lose. This is really important, because many of us are trained in debate where we win or we lose, or we gain points, or we convince the other, or the other is wrong and we're right. So we're trying to move from that to begin a relationship that attitudes can change. What is your proclivity going in? What is your prejudice going in? Can I get you to see other human beings maybe a little differently, and then hear why you may feel the way you feel, and deal with that in a dialogue. Behavior change is persuasion, and when we study rhetoric, we're studying the art of persuasion. So we do want to persuade people to take action or change an attitude, preferably towards how we think, but again, it's an open conversation. So, bridging divides, understanding that people have different values, that they think and feel and behave differently than we do, and it's okay. We don't have to stigmatize them. And then, how do we look at making bridges? So the first principle is what we'll call empathetic imagination. Can I imagine what it's like to be in someone else's think, feel, and do framework? Margarita started out talking about communities, right? What is a community? Well, even in communities we have differences. Empathetic imagination enables me to imagine what a Mexican farm worker who is underpaid, overworked, and has no power, how does that person feel? And Cesar Chavez enabled me to have that empathetic imagination without my actually experiencing what that Mexican farm worker experiences. I'm able to take that leap. And leaders enable me to take that leap. Sometimes media does. Sometimes we'll see a movie and we'll say, wow, I now understand something because I saw 12 Years a Slave, and now I understand something that I feel something that I didn't feel before. I may have known it in my head, but I didn't feel it in my heart. And sometimes great art, great media enables us to have what we call resonance. Remember, we studied that. The resonance of feeling something as a result of the stimulus of the media. But all of this revolves around my ability to put myself into somebody else's place without judgment and saying I'm better than them or I need to change them. Framing and reframing. In the political world, this is essential. How do I frame an argument so that my point of view or my story is a positive one, right? Cesar Chavez, going back to that, framed the story of the Mexican farm worker with grapes and didn't have to give equal time to the farm owners. He framed that story so that my empathetic imagination was with the worker. This idea of framing and reframing, as I mentioned, is very important in political. When Obama came out with the Affordable Care Act, and they had many different aspects of it, one of the aspects was to have something in there that people who were at end of life would be able to get counsel about going into hospice or how to deal with end of life issues, which was a very, actually saved money for the system, but was a very humanistic way to approach end of life in that we would fund people to be able to get counseled. The Republicans framed it as a death panel. By framing it as a death panel, they were able to defeat that because they framed it in such a way that they made it negative in your mindset of, oh, we're putting people to death, rather than we're counseling people end of life. So how we frame is and reframe. We hear something, somebody says something that may be antagonistic, we can reframe it as an opportunity to get to the question behind the question, what's the feeling behind the feeling. Probing. Open-ended questions, you don't answer yes or no, you're looking for more information. Closed-ended questions, yes or no. Are you a male or are you a female? Yes, no. How do you feel about being a male in this era is an open-ended question. How do you feel about being a Latina in San Francisco State in this era is an open-ended question. Asking for someone to share with you their worldview or their concerns. Probing is very important because we can then continue the conversation on a depthful level. Active listening means that we listen using different methods of listening. So we don't just hear what somebody says so that we can rebut them, or hear what they say so that we can then talk. We are listening to them actively and trying to both have them feel they're understood and furthering the relationship. So one form of active listening is objective listening. What did you actually say? Can I repeat what you said in a way that you know that you have been heard? So if someone says something that they feel hurt or they feel angry, we start out with objective listening, saying, I understand that you have anger around this issue, or that you're expressing this point of view around this issue. That is objective listening. All we're doing is letting the person know that we have heard so that they don't feel they have to repeat themselves or they're being disregarded. So that's already a step towards building a relationship. Emotional listening what is the emotion that's going with that? When somebody speaks to us, are they tightening up? Are they feeling some kind of emotion that we can pick up and then say, you know, I hear you're saying this, but I feel that you're feeling vulnerable, or you're feeling angry, or there's some emotion that I'm picking up. Can you tell me about how you feel? Not just what you're thinking. How do you feel? Or I think I'm sensing that you feel this. Are you feeling it? Okay, so there's an emotional. All of you who have been in relationships have been triggered by the person who you're dating or you're a spouse with, and they say something and you get angry, and before you know it, you go down a slippery slope because the anger or the feeling has taken over, and we haven't stepped back to try to explore that a little bit more, and we just go with the anger, or we just go with the feeling, and we don't allow the other person to explore that feeling in terms of why they feel that way, and that they feel that we understand why they may feel that way. The third is intuitive. Intuitive is not what they say, not what they feel, but what you sense is behind it. And your ability to open up opportunities where they're saying they are feeling constrained is intuitively listening to them, thinking that there are no solutions, and then you can reframe and you can open it up by intuitively change it, understanding what the message is objectively, emotionally, and then intuitively what's really behind it. What is their real concern? They may not even know what it is or be expressing it. This, by the way, is what we do in coaching. We have objective listening, we have emotional, we understand what the emotion is. Then we go with the intuitive. Okay, I hear what you're saying. Now, how could you think about it a little differently? And you're using your intuition to get them to look at opportunities where they may only be seeing obstacles. We're going to demonstrate some of this, by the way, but these are the tools that you can use as you're looking at conciliation.